Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. We've got you covered. Traditional leagues, dynasty league, PPR league, IDP league, even daily fantasy football league. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Hello, and welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Ryan Basulto, and we are back. The NFL Draft is next week, so it looks like we are going to look at a mock draft to see what your team is going to draft and what pick. And then we'll go over some news around the NFL. And then follow that up by the 10 top receivers I think that are coming out of this year's 2021 NFL Draft. But first, we're going to talk about Pro Football Focus's mock draft of all 32 teams and what they're drafting. And then we're going to see if it makes sense fantasy-wise and what it does for them fantasy-wise as well. So we'll go start off from the top of it. Start off with the first pick, Trevor Lawrence, quarterback coming out of Clemson. He's definitely going to be Jacksonville's first pick. He's been locked in for a while. The Jaguars look like they're going to get one of the best quarterback prospects of all time. Trevor Lawrence has 3 straight years of 90-plus Pro Football Focus grades and an arm to attack all levels. He has great accuracy deep. He has great accuracy short. He showed it with his couple years at Clemson. Lawrence, he also adds, a good running game to what could help the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's gained 445 yards on scrambles and 819 yards on design runs in his 3 years at Clemson. I mean, he could do it all. They have James Robinson in that backfield, which is a top 10 fantasy running back last year. The undrafted rookie had a great year, and I think it will just be a lot better if Trevor Lawrence is added to the bunch. Trevor Lawrence has one of the best grades since Andrew Luck coming out of the NFL, so it shows you what kind of prospect and what type of talent he has. He's leading a quarterback-heavy draft in 2021. 5 quarterbacks are probably going to go in the first round. I wouldn't even be surprised if 6 go, but it looks like Trevor Lawrence is going to be the first one out of all of them to be taken. Yes, Trevor Lawrence did have not as good competition going into the ASCC, but he did show that he could beat a formidable defense like Alabama. Alabama was one of the SEC's top-ranked defenses, and they usually are under head coach Nick Saban. Jacksonville Jaguars just need a leader. That's the only thing they're, have big issues on. Their defense has a lot of work to get onto, but the Jacksonville Jaguars need someone to lead that offense. The Jaguars were the 28th ranked offense last year, averaging 326 yards per game, only 213 in the air, 231 in the air, which was bottom 10 in the NFL. Only teams worse than him are teams like the football team, the Broncos, the Bengals, the Eagles, the Giants, just a bunch of mediocre teams. So it just showed you what kind of what kind of offense the Jacksonville Jaguars have going into next year. The Jaguars don't, make it particularly easy, as they got sacked 44 times last year, which was 25th most in the NFL. And what helps is that Trevor Lawrence, like I said, he had over 1,200 yards in his 3 years at Clemson, so it shows you that he's mobile. He could get out. That's what you need in today's NFL. You need a mobile quarterback. You can't just have a quarterback who sits in the back of the pocket, unless they're pretty much Tom Brady, which is a very rare breed. And Tom Brady didn't just happen overnight. There was a lot of Bill Belichick helping him out with his guru-ness and, him just becoming the GOAT he is today. And he's just one of the few that could get away with not being athletic while also still being able to perform at a high level in the NFL. Trevor Lawrence had a great year last year, 3,100 yards and 24 touchdowns, only 5 picks. That could be a good improvement because the Jacksonville Jaguars weren't too good on the turnover end last year. They were 6th in the NFL with the most interceptions in the NFL. So that's not good to be a top team. They're actually tied for 6th with 4 other teams. And the only teams that threw more interceptions than the Jaguars were the Niners, Eagles, and Broncos, who are all looking to add another quarterback. So Trevor Lawrence going with the first pick. We'll go on to the second pick. It's going to be the Jets are obviously going to get Zach Wilson. They're moving on from Sam Darnold. He was lights out last year. He posted a Pro Football Focus passing grade of 95.5, which is the best in Pro Football Focus era. Yes. Pro Football Focus breaks down all the analytics, all the numbers, crunches it all down, maths it up, and then brings it to you on a silver platter in rankings. And they have Zach Wilson having the highest Pro Football Focus passing grade in history. He ranked 2nd in the draft class in big-time throw percentage and 1st in avoiding turnover-worthy plays, something the Jets really, really need. His development is just going to all be dependent on the Jets. And the Jets are just not doing too well. They were in total offense last year. The Jets were the worst. They only had 279 yards per game. That's in total, only having 15 points per game. And the Jets just all around were terrible. They're one of the worst offensive teams, one of the worst defensive teams. They turned over the ball way too many times. Their quarterback got hit 105 times throughout the year. They got sacked 43 times, which ranks 9th in the NFL behind the Jaguars by 1 sack only. They're just crazy how the Jets organization works, because they hired Rex Ryan, built defense, got Todd Bowles after to keep building that defense and neglect the quarterback position. Then they got Adam Gase out of the Miami Dolphins, a coordinator, and you're like, okay, his whole focus is quarterbacks. We gave him Sam Darnold. We're giving Adam Gase, a fresh slate. He at least has Jamison Crowder, Breshad Perryman, some formidable, receivers, but still wasn't enough. Now they have Robert Saleh coming in to probably focus in on that defense again. So I don't know how much you can trust Zach Wilson in this offense, but he's definitely going to make it a lot better. His ranking and grade is a lot better than what Sam Darnold was coming out of USC. Yes, Sam Darnold is the same. He was a number 2 pick coming out of the draft, but I think Zach Wilson has a lot more potential. I think that Sam Darnold has more athletic ability as opposed to Zach Wilson has better decision-making skills. If you look at the tape, Zach Wilson could make throws on the money. And, it didn't help too much that he was in BYU, and BYU is not one of the best conferences in the world. But Zach Wilson put on a lights-out year last year, throwing 32 touchdowns and only 3 interceptions. If you want to look at his passer rating, it was 136. Almost a perfect passer rating, just 20 points off. 72% completion percentage. That just shows you exactly how good of his decision-making is. The New York Jets are going to get a good one in Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson is someone that can help out that Jets offense. Like I said, they have Corey Davis. They have Jamison Crowder, Denzel Mims, and Keelan Cole. They have all formidable receivers. Corey Davis had over 900 yards last year receiving. If they get Zach Wilson, which it looks like they are going to, Corey Davis will probably have 8,000-yard season if he stays healthy all year. just due to the accuracy Zach Wilson has, the big playability that he could throw. He's second in college football in big throw percentage, deep throws going past 30 or more yards. Zach Wilson has what it takes to go deep. He's going to have Jamison Crowder, who's one of the best route runners in the NFL, who's going to be able to cut it up in the slot, so that's going to take away a lot of focus. They probably need another running back in this draft. That's something that they do need to focus on, but the quarterback position is definitely a good start for the New York Jets. Let's go on to the third pick. The San Francisco 49ers got the pick from the Dolphins, who got the pick from the Texans. So, I believe that it says that they're going to get Justin Fields. And I don't know how true that is, just because it looks like the way Kyle Shanahan's kind of working is he really excited for Trey Lance. That's what the news is, which you never know. And this is Pro Football Focus. They break down all the numbers and do all the math so we don't have to. Ranking them, going through all 32 picks. Like I said, we're going to go through all of them for this upcoming draft, at least in the first round, and we'll see what the fantasy implications are with it. But the thing is, though, if they do get Justin Fields, it makes sense because Kyle Shanahan's offense is usually really, really good, but it's hit like a different level 2 times. In 2012 with Washington and 2016 with the Falcons. In 2012, the team had RG3, and they're using him effectively on that Washington team with a design run play action. So it was more like a vertical zone. You make them bite on the zone runs and then, extend it deep and hit them with play action, or even fake him on the zone run, peel out on the other end and be able to run the other one. Fields has 2 seasons with 90 plus Pro Football Focus grades, and he's ranked 4th with a 92.2 passing grade last year, so he's one of the top. And a top rushing grade at 85.3. Definitely one of the better mobile quarterbacks coming out of the draft. It helps a lot that he came out of Ohio State. Ohio State's known for having their mobile quarterbacks. They've had Braxton Miller, Cordell Jones, Troy Smith. You can name them all. He has the accuracy to hit open throws, creating the Mike Shanahan offense. It's not that easy. He just has to get it out of his hands because Justin Fields has the slowest release. So it takes him on average 3.11 seconds to release from the ball from his hand, and I'm talking about on his throws. So when it comes to him saying hike, it takes about 3 seconds for him to finally let go of the ball, which is the second slowest in the class. He needs to just speed that up more and make his decision-making skills a little better. By the way they make it sound like he doesn't have a great work ethic, but how could he not? He's been thriving in the league in college football. He had a good year last year, 2,098 yards passing, 22 touchdowns in the air, and only 6 interceptions. So, his decision-making is not that bad. They did only play 6 games because, they weren't even supposed to play, and then Justin Fields was actually the one that, led the conversation of Ohio State coming back into college football playoffs. The good thing about Justin Fields is that shows his leadership and it shows what he could do. I think that his dynamic ability, along with Kyle Shanahan's running offense, he could do a zone run type of thing with RG3, would make him probably one of the best quarterbacks coming out of the draft that you could draft, like in fantasy purposes. Just because Trevor Lawrence, yeah, he's going to be good, but the Jacksonville Jaguars aren't as good as the Dolphins. They don't already have a great foundation set for him. The San Francisco 49ers have absolutely everything they need, and that is exactly why they went all the way up to try to get a quarterback. They have Deebo Samuel. They have Brandon Ayuk on each side. Those are 2 1 and 2 receivers. Perfect. Then you got George Kittle, a tight end 1. You got Kyle Juszczyk, who's one of the best fullbacks, and they're going to try to use Raheem Mostert, apparently, is what they said, this upcoming year more often. Him and Jeff Wilson Jr. lead that pack in the backfield. So they have everything they need and all the weapons for Justin Fields. They just need a guy to come out there and make plays with his feet. CJ Beathard couldn't do it. Nick Mullins couldn't do it. They're going to try with Jimmy G, but if Jimmy G fails after a couple starts, you best believe that they're going to just put in Justin Fields or anybody else that they feel they should have got, that they got at the 3rd pick, should come in and lead that offense. Let's move on to the number 4 pick. which is really interesting because it says the Atlanta Falcons are going to take on tight end Kyle Pitts. This is going to be the first. Looks like pretty much either him or Jamar Chase, but Kyle Pitts has the longest wingspan out of any pass catcher in the draft in history. The longest, the person who had the longest wingspan before him was DK Metcalf. Now it's Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is a freak of nature athlete. And I'm pretty sure that the Falcons need better defense because their defense is awful, just completely awful. And it's not like they need more offensive threats if they already have. If they got Hayden Hurst last year, tight end from the Baltimore Ravens, they got Julio Jones, and they got Calvin Ridley. So all these guys, it doesn't make sense why they would get Kyle Pitts, but his 96.1 receiving yards, per game was the best we've ever seen from a tight end since 2014. Pitts, Julio Jones, and Calvin Ridley. Best trio that you could see in Atlanta. And you would probably draft Kyle Pitts higher than I would draft him as high as Kelsey, Kittle, and Waller if he gets to the Falcons. If he gets to the Falcons, he's pretty much up there in a super tight end one category, which rarely are. Like I said, only Kelsey, Kittle, and Waller are some of the best playmakers at the position, the ones that you would get in fantasy. And the Falcons, if they were to get him, it would help them a lot. Let's move on to the 5th pick. It says that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to get Penei Sewell from Oregon. And this is the hottest debate pretty much out of the top 10 picks. Is it going to be Jamar Chase or is it going to be Penei Sewell? And I'm saying it's going to be Sewell because you need someone to block Joe Burrow. Like, no one understands that. I want Jamar Chase on that team, and that's just for simple fantasy purposes only. But the Bengals were the 5th most sacked team in the NFL. 48 sacks. 48 sacks. The only teams that were sacked more were the Texans, the Eagles, and the Giants, and the football team. So you're telling me 3 teams from the NFC East and the Texans? Yeah, no. That means they're not doing it right. Let's talk about how many times they were hit. They were hit the second most time. Their quarterback was hit the second most times. And we all know what happened to Joe Burrow after he broke his leg, basically, not being guarded last year by that Bengals offensive line. Jamar Chase sounds great, but you still have T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. You can try to get another receiver or even a better running back, so you could maybe have a Joe Mixon, a 1-2 punch running back in the backfield, or even try to get another tight end or another big body later in the draft. You get Rondale Moore if you want a big home run hitter. Jamar Chase makes sense, but if Joe Burrow's just going to keep breaking his leg, then what's the point of even drafting a receiver if he's just not even going to be out there? You already know what happens when Joe Burrow's not out there. You're stuck with Brandon Allen and friends, and that's the worst that it's going to get because he's not moving the ball. He lost pretty much every single game that he started. Oh, man. And I feel like and he's an offensive tackle. Tackle is one of the most important positions in the NFL. He's an outstanding run blocker, especially in zone concepts where he ranks in the 98th percentile compared to recent NFL prospects. So he's already better than 98% of NFL prospects right now. In pass protection, Sewell only allowed 15 pressures on 706 pass block attempts. And if you pair him with the other tackle, who's the other tackle on the other side? Jonah Williams. Jonah Williams on the other side. And then they just cited Riley Reif to a 1-year deal. That line's not going to be as bad as it could be. And anything is better than being the second worst team at letting your quarterback get hit and the worst and the 5th most sacked team in the NFL. So I think that the Dolphins just need, the Bengals just need to prioritize who they need to get, and they see that Penei Sewell is someone that they need to covet, that's someone that needs to be drafted, and that's someone that's going to help this team move forward. You could always get another weapon. A premier tackle doesn't always fall off the tree. Let's go on to the number 6 before we go into the break. The number 6 pick, the Miami Dolphins. And PFF says they are going to get Jamar Chase. Since the Bengals said we're not getting Jamar Chase, Eagles are too. The Dolphins are too. They moved up with Philadelphia in this pick after they dropped out of the number 3 spot. They have to get Chase. They have to get him because they need a weapon because Devontae Parker got hurt last year. Preston Williams got hurt last year. They're stuck with Jakeem Grant, some of Mike Gesicki, and Matt Collins. That's who they were stuck with. Jamar Chase was uncoverable when he was playing in 2019. Averaged 21.2 yards per reception on 84 catches. That's absolutely insane. That means he's just a constant deep threat. And then you could say, oh, well, it's college, maybe he's not going against, well, he runs a 4.38, so is he slow? No, I don't think so. Oh, and also he was going against SEC schools like Alabama, Florida, Georgia, going against the best nation and best colleges in the nation and the best prospects in the nation. Put Chase alongside with Will Fuller on the other side, and then Devontae Parker, and they still have Mike Gesicki? Oh, yeah. Add Jamar Chase or Kyle Pitts to this offense, you're picking them no matter what. All this does is help Tua's production. I don't know how much Tua's going to be able to put it on the money to Jamar Chase, but we'll see. It's really going to be dependent on what the Bengals or the Atlanta Falcons do. Because the Bengals need a lineman, the Falcons most likely need another quarterback. I don't know why they're trying to ride Matt Ryan in his, at the age of 35 still, but that's what they're trying to do. When we come back, we will get into the other picks in the draft. I still haven't mentioned Devontae Smith. I haven't even mentioned Mac Jones. I haven't even mentioned Jalen Waddle. All that and more when we come back from the break.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Hello, and we are back at the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, where we make everyone that's just, someone who's just a little novice into champions. Today, we are going over Pro Football Focus's first round mock draft, and we just like to go to Pro Football Focus specifically because they do the math, they crunch down the numbers, they make the list, they know what they're doing, and also, to be honest with you, nowadays, social media has kind of ruined like the surprise of people who are getting drafted. So most of the time, all these lists are pretty much the same. They're all spot on. You can go to Mel Kiper's or Todd McShay's draft, but they're all I've looked over all the drafts. They're all the same. They all have Zach Wilson going second. They have the only thing that's different that people just aren't sure on, and that's the only thing is two things actually. One, who the heck are the Niners going to get? Are they going to get Mac Jones, quarterback out of Alabama, or are they going to get Trey Lance, or are they going to get Justin Fields? This one has Justin Fields, and I'm pretty sure that's just the safe bet because Justin Fields is the second or third best prospect on this quarterback draft. And are the Bengals going to get Kyle Pitts? Are they going to get Jamar Chase? Are they going to get a tackle like they really need because Joe Burrow gets hit all the time? And he got hit the second most in the league last year and sacked fifth most in the league last year. So that just kind of shows you what the Bengals' priorities should be. But you never know. You never know with any of these teams. We're going to go on to the seventh team. We just got over the Miami Dolphins. They're going to pick up, it looks like, Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase makes sense. Jamar Chase, Kyle Pitts, pretty much what the Dolphins are looking for. They're looking for another weapon to add alongside Will Fuller and Devontae Parker. So let's go on to the seventh pick, the Detroit Lions, who's going to pick a different Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith is probably or not probably he is, but he has one of the most elite college football seasons in history. Definitely one of the best out of any receiver. He's one of the most decorated college wide receivers in history. That's for sure. The guy had last year he won a Heisman, and he caught for over 20 touchdowns. Yes, 20 touchdowns, all at the height and weight of 6'1", 175. That is the only thing that is concerning about the speedster Devontae Smith. He is tiny. Like I said, he's only 6'1", 175. John Morant's the size of is 175. If you need to see how, kind of graded against like what athletes are 175, because not many other ones in the NFL are. That's why I had to name an NBA athlete. He has great ball skills though. He had the 7th highest YAC per reception, which is yard after the catch, among NFL prospects dating back to 2014. His 94.9 Pro Football Focus grade is the best single season mark from a receiver in college football history. So it's just showing you what he showed you on paper. He showed you, I'm going to have over 1,800 yards. I'm going to have 20 touchdowns. Now, being 6'1", 175 at receiver and you're going against grown men, I don't know how that's going to work too well for you. All these corners, they're about the same size and height, but they're just as fast. And the thing that Devontae Smith benefited from a lot is that he had Jalen Waddle on the other side. And before that, he even had Jerry Jeudy on the other side as well. So Jerry Jeudy, Jalen Waddle, he was a product of a lot of great players on Alabama. So they had, out of all the people who were going to be left open, Devontae Smith was one of them, because Jalen Waddle is a great other option too. I wouldn't even be surprised if someone drafted them over Devontae Smith. Only reason why I would be surprised is because Devontae Smith just came off his Heisman year, and wide receivers don't win Heismans at all. So for any wide receiver to show out like that just kind of shows what kind of special talent they are. And a lot of times in the NFL draft, they don't go off of common sense. They just go off what the talent could be, and especially what the potential could be. The potential of Devontae Smith is exponential for them, because any receiver who could give them 1,900 yards and 23 touchdowns in a year in a 13-game season is definitely someone to look out for. The Detroit Lions, the only problem is, what's good is they need another receiver. They have no receivers. They just lost Marvin Jones, who had a little under 1,000 yards last year, and Kenny Galladay, who only played 4 games, showed you what he showed you, but left and went to the New York Giants. The Lions need a playmaker, and if Jamar Chase isn't there, or Kyle Pitts, which they shouldn't be, Jalen Waddle or Devontae Smith look like the best options. Let's move on to the 8th pick. The Carolina Panthers are going to get Rashawn Slater out of Northwestern. The left tackle is going to definitely help Sam Darnold. He only got 5 pressures on 355 attempts over the last 2 seasons, and he is definitely the second best tackle to come off the board. Rashawn Slater is a big boy. He's 6'3", 314. Anybody over 300 pounds is definitely a big person. That's going to help him out a lot. He's going to help out a Carolina offense that did not protect the quarterback particularly well last year. They let the quarterback get sacked 36 times last year, which ranked 13th in the NFL. So if you're ranking top 15 in a sack category, that's not one of the best things. The turnover differential wasn't good either. It was -5, so that just showed you that the quarterback had less time, probably was getting sacked too much, making a lot of turnover and risky plays. They do not have Teddy Bridgewater anymore. Like I said, they have Sam Darnold, but Sam Darnold, ever since 2018, has had the most turnovers out of any starting quarterback in the NFL. So, all that being said, they need to do what they can to make them comfortable. They don't need weapons there on the Carolina Panthers, because they already have DJ Moore, over 1,000 yards. They had Robbie Anderson, who had over 1,000 yards as well. They lost Curtis Samuel, but it's okay. They could find someone else in the draft. They get someone late, like I said, like a Rondale Moore, someone who's a big play ability type of guy. And they also have Christian McCaffrey back in the back, which is going to take up enough for him and a slot because of the type of production Christian McCaffrey gets. He gets over 300 touches every single year where he has not been hurt, which were his first 3 years. This year was an exception, but he still scored over 20 fantasy points every single game Christian McCaffrey touched the grass. So you want to block for Christian McCaffrey. You want to block for Sam Darnold. You have the weapons. You do not need any other weapons. You don't need a quarterback. You already got that settled with Sam Darnold. It's time to let it roll and do what the Bills did. The Bills didn't get their offense and everything first. They got Josh Allen, then they built that line in front of them. So they got to build the line in front of Sam Darnold, and I think that'll help the Carolina Panthers just that much more, especially with Christian McCaffrey. That could help his fantasy value tremendously. There are some rumors that the Broncos could trade up for a quarterback, but since we're just giving them the 9th spot right now, it says that they are going to have Mac Jones, quarterback from Alabama. He posted a 95.8 Pro Football Focus grade last season. That was top 3 out of all college football quarterbacks, obviously behind Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson. He's the least mobile out of all of them, but he executes his offense at a high level. Jones has the second lowest rate of second lowest rate of negatively graded throws compared to recent NFL prospects. And that is a big, huge, huge factor, because if you're saying negative throws, the Broncos are pretty much written all over it. The Broncos have given away one of the most turnovers in the NFL. Scratch that, the most turnovers in the NFL. They gave up 32 turnovers, which is behind the Niners, the Eagles, behind absolutely everybody. So they just need a pure decision maker. Drew Lock is not doing it for them back there. He is not helping that Broncos offense. They threw the most interceptions in the league with 23 interceptions. That was also cumulative of Mark Rypien and other quarterbacks that came in for Drew Lock while he was hurt. But yes, Drew Lock didn't even get sacked that much too. 32 times. That only ranked 13th in the NFL. So he's top 15 in getting sacked. So that he doesn't get sacked or touched that often. But they're still throwing turnovers. They're still making terrible mistakes. They need someone in there who's going to be poised, who could stand in the pocket, someone that John Elway would trust. Mac Jones has that written all over him. I would just be surprised if Mac Jones lasted that long, because I feel like Mac Jones is, if anything, he's going to go to the San Francisco 49ers. He fits their system so well. He only threw 4 interceptions last year, had a higher passer rating than Zach Wilson, 141, 41 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 76% completion percentage, which was also higher than Zach Wilson, 4,400 yards throwing. You can say a lot of that was benefited by him having Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Najee Harris, and everyone else in between. But it looks like Mac Jones, if he were to go to the Broncos, he would definitely be a boost for Jerry Jeudy, who is his ex-colleague when they played back at Alabama. Jerry Jeudy had over 1,600 receiving yards his last year at Alabama. It wasn't from Mac Jones. It was from Jalen Hurts, but it shows you that the Alabama connection is always strong. It's always strong. They always have, that type of swag around them, that Roll Tide swag. So Mac Jones goes to the Broncos. That fantasy offense gets boosted tremendously. This could help them a lot. So this could make them literally where I had them ranked, 25th on my top fantasy offenses before the draft. Maybe they'll move up to, 18, 19. Who knows? I don't trust Vic Fangio. That's what I'm going to stay away from. Okay, the first defensive player is going to come off the board, and we'll kind of miss that. Patrick Surtain going to the Cowboys. Yes, the Cowboys do need a cornerbacks because all they have is Trayvon Diggs. They don't have any safeties. They were bottom 5 in the NFL and passing yards allowed. Patrick Surtain would fit them perfectly. He's one of the top. He's the top cornerback, especially coming from Alabama. It would help out a lot. He has the top grade out of all college football corners according to Pro Football Focus, and he fits in the new defensive scheme while also helping them out with that outside corner need. Like I said, the Dallas Cowboys need a cornerback. They get Patrick Surtain, but we're not doing IDPs, individual players in fantasy football today. We were just talking about mainly offensive people and what they'll do. Hey, that'll help the Cowboys, fantasy defense, but will it help it out that much? We'll see. Number 11, New York Giants, they get Jalen Waddle. Like I've been saying, this would help out a lot because Kenny Galladay just left. So they have, this would not help. I said this won't, mix my words up. This won't help at all because they just got Kenny Galladay. Yes, Jalen Waddle is a Deshaun Jackson, stretch down the field type of guy. He did that a lot when he was in Alabama. But what do they need him for? You could do the same thing with Sterling Shepard. You could do the same thing with Darius Slayton. Darius Slayton's a, down the field type of guy. Why would they need another receiver? What I would say this helps is that in fantasy offense helps Saquon, helps out all these people because you're not going to stack the box if they have Kenny Galladay, Darius Slayton, and Jalen Waddle on the inside. Jalen Waddle, besides Jamar Chase and Devontae Smith, is the third best receiver to come out of the draft. Helps that he played in Alabama. And the only thing that's his downfall is that he's only played 22% of snaps outside of Devontae Smith and Jerry Jeudy in that lineup. So you don't get to see him too much as a number one receiver. But Adam, to the Giants where they already have a bunch of receivers and they just need someone else to give an extra weapon because, Darius Slayton got hurt last year a lot. Sterling Shepard got hurt last year a lot. They don't have Golden Tate anymore. And they need a legit deep threat with Kenny Galladay, and that's going to help them, be able to stretch the middle of the field and to go deep at all points. Jalen Waddle, I like a lot. The receiver out of Alabama, like him a lot going to the New York Giants, but only for fantasy purposes. I just don't get why the Giants would want to do that, but I'm never surprised by what the Giants do. We're going to go over, we'll brush past the Eagles. The Eagles look like they're going to get cornerback J.C. Horn. J.C. Horn is the second best cornerback coming off the draft. Some say the other guy, what's his name? Greg Newsome's better, but I would say that J.C. Horn's just a little bit better. He broke up 19.5% of his targets, which is almost 1/5 of his stuff. If the Eagles were to add him along with Darius Slade, that would help out a lot with them on the defensive end, especially since they had one of the most sacks in the NFL last year. Let's move on to the Chargers. The Chargers, they have all the weapons. Now they just need a lineman. Christian Darrisaw, if I said that right, from Virginia Tech. The tackle, he's a powerful run blocker. He only gave 6 pressures on 293 pass blocking attempts last year. Really good. Like I said, only pressures. If you want to guess sacks, no sacks at all last year he gave up. But he did give up only 6 pressures. He's a great run blocker. Christian Darrisaw would help out that LA Chargers offense a lot. They already have all the weapons they need. They have Austin Eckler. They already have Jared Cook to be a good tight end. He had 7 touchdowns last year. They had Mike Williams. They have Keenan Allen. They got all the weapons. They got Justin Herbert's legs. They got Justin Jackson as a backup. They have everything they need. Now they just need to protect the quarterback better. The Chargers did give up 34 sacks, which was bottom 15 in the NFL last year, and they gave up 110 quarterback hits, which was 9th in the NFL last year. So Justin Herbert was constantly getting hurt. Christian Darrisaw with a 95.6 Pro Football Focus rating out of 100 should be the truth. He's another big boy, 6'5", actually. He's taller than the last guy I mentioned, Penei Sewell. 6'5", 314. Big guy. The Chargers need that a lot. Like I said, they need someone to protect the future, which is Justin Herbert. If they were to get this guy and they could protect Justin Herbert better, he'll be able to make bigger plays. Instead of him throwing 4,000 yards, who knows? Maybe he'll go 4,500, 5,000 yards throwing the next year. He just needs someone and some more protection. That helps a lot. They already have the weapons. Smart end if the Chargers get a tackle. The Vikings, looks like they're going to get an interior defensive lineman. Christian Barmore out of Alabama. That helps because the Minnesota Vikings offense is obviously fine. They just need a revamp on that defense. So good for them. Number 15, it has New England drafting very wishfully too. Quarterback Trey Lance, the North Dakota State product, has fell all the way down to the 15th pick. And it looks like that's exactly what the New England Patriots need, because he did his best work in 2019 when he got a 90.7 grade overall, but he only has 371 career dropbacks in his whole collegiate career. So he doesn't have much of a sample size to work from. He threw for 66%. So, I mean, he has a lot of good raw talent. He's 6'4", 226. He's built kind of like he plays, and he's built like a Dak Prescott. But in his 2019 legendary year, he did throw 28 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. You love that a lot. That's exactly what Bill Belichick wants to work for. Bill Belichick doesn't need the best quarterback of all time. He just needs someone that he could work with, and someone that's a good talent to work from. I like that a lot for the New England Patriots. New England Patriots really, really struggled last year. They were one of the worst passing teams in the NFL. I feel bad because Cam Newton, he knows he's on his way out. They only threw 12 touchdowns last year, which was bottom in the NFL, tied with the New York Giants, and they threw 14 interceptions, which was barely in front of the Seahawks and barely below the Jets. It just shows you that quarterback play is not good for the New England Patriots. They were also the third worst passing team, threw for only 180 yards per game. Only teams worse than that were the Ravens, who never throw, but they have such a great run game, you can't even fault them. That's why they are in the playoff contention every single year, ever since the addition to Lamar Jackson. And one of the worst franchises of all time, the Jets. So Trey Lance and his 28 touchdowns, 0 picks is definitely someone that Bill Belichick wants. He wants a smart guy, not someone who's going to come in like a knucklehead or someone who's too much of a raw talent. He's a smart guy that he can mold into being one of these legendary New England quarterbacks. But yeah, that was most of it. We are still halfway. We are going to go through the other half. The other half's going to be a little faster of the draft, just because mostly it's going to be defensive guys. All the big names pretty much got taken off the board. But when we come back, we'll talk about the rest of the teams and who they pick according to the mock draft when we come back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hello, and we are back at the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. I am still Ryan, and I'm still here trying to help you guys become fantasy champions next year in the 2021 year. 2020 wasn't so good for all of us, except moi when I won the fantasy championship, but 2021 is definitely going to look pretty good coming in the future. Feel like we're doing a lot of research. We're doing all the stuff we have to. I've talked about all the top offenses. I've broken down who should be the number one overall pick, and I pitted everyone against each other in tournament-style bracket form. I've even had who should be the top pick in each of their respective positions, talking about quarterback, running back, tight ends, receivers. I'm also breaking down who are my top 10 running backs, quarterbacks, and receivers coming out of college that are coming into this NFL draft. We're going over every single facet. We even broke down what IDPs are, which are individual players. We talked about the formats in different leagues, the advantages and disadvantages to other types of leagues. So we've broken down the basics. We've broken down last year's stats. I've already just yelled at you pretty much because you don't have any input. All the knowledge and all the stats on pretty much every single major player from every single major team. We even went over the added on Week 17 that they just added into the NFL and went over every single one of those matchups. So we broke down every single major fantasy player from each of those teams. So we have gone over every single person that is important in fantasy football in the NFL today. But what we still have to go over is the future and the people who are going to get drafted in the NFL draft, because this is where actual teams, not fantasy teams, actual teams become champions in the draft. It's where you draft that lineman that helped you, helped the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They had 2 rookie offensive linemen last year. One of them notably tackled Trey Wirfs. No sacks on Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. Trey Wirfs showed all of his worth. He was one of the prime tackles. He also got invited to the Pro Bowl. The things are made and championships are made in the draft. So let's go over whoever has the number 16 pick, which is the Arizona Cardinals. They are probably going to get a linebacker, and it looks like it's going to be Micah Parsons, linebacker out of Penn State. He's had one of the best run defense Pro Football Focus ranking grades out of any linebacker. Especially, he has had one of the best grades since a linebacker in 2014, and he also has a 4.3 speed. That's going to help out that Cardinals defense, especially since they added J.J. Watt. They're gonna, if they add a linebacker or a cornerback, they just got rid of Patrick Peterson, who was getting older and wasn't what he used to be. And they still have Budda Baker in the back. The Raiders are probably going to get another cornerback because they definitely need someone else to help them on that defensive end. The Raiders were bottom 5 actually, in passing yards allowed. They need someone who's going to be able to help them against Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and what if the Broncos actually get a good quarterback? It'll help them out a lot. Greg Newsome is probably who they're going to get out of Northwestern. He runs a cover 3 scheme. Gus Bradley also runs a cover 3 scheme, the defensive coordinator of the Raiders. So it'll help them out a lot. Cover 3 corners usually are better ball hawk corners as opposed to someone who's more of a man like kind of cover, like maybe Asante Samuel or Darrelle Revis. They're someone who likes to play off, gets to play freely, and gets to be a ball hawk. Plays more like a safety corner. Greg Newsome is someone that would be good for them. Like I said, they're going to go against Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, all those people. But that's defense. Greg Newsome, that'll help them a lot. The Miami Dolphins, looks like they're going to probably get a defensive end because they have another pick in this draft. Not only are they going to get an offensive weapon, whether it is Kyle Pitts, Jamar Chase, whoever falls on their lap, they are going to take gladly. If by some reason both of those guys are gone in the first couple of picks, I promise you they'll even get Jalen Waddle or Devontae Smith if they have to. They're not afraid to get other options. There's a lot of good receivers, pass catchers, and quarterbacks in this draft. So it looks like the Dolphins are going to get a defensive end. It says Kwity Paye from Michigan. He's good. He has really good agility. He ran a sub 6.5 in the 3-cone drill in the NFL draft, which shows that he has, he's a big guy. He's strong, and he's very nimble on his feet because he's 6'4", 272. For him to be moving that fast in a 3-cone drill, which is usually literally 3 cones, 2 side by side, horizontal from each other, and then 1 vertical up and parallel to the one particularly to the right. usually run in and out of those cones. That shows how nimble your feet are. Helps them out a lot. The Dolphins need some help on defense. They just need big playmakers because that's what they want. And with with Kwity Page's, great strength and athleticism, along with the 10 sacks that he had last year at Michigan, all that should bode well for the Miami Dolphins. Washington football team, finally, they're going to looks like they're going to get a receiver to add alongside with Curtis Samuel and Terry McLaurin. Yes, they also did add Adam Humphries, but it looks like they might get Rashad Bateman. He had 36 forced missed tackles on 147 catches. That just shows you what the Washington football team's offense is going to be all about. They're definitely going to be a big play offense. He's 6'2", 210, so he's big enough. The Minnesota Gopher product. In his one of his better years, he had 120 catches for 1,219 yards, averaging 20 yards per catch and 11 touchdowns. That was in 2019. Last year was a shorter sample size. He only had 36 catches, for 472 yards and 2 touchdowns. Rashad Bateman is someone who can align at all positions on the field. So he could play in the slot. He also plays on the outside. He could play opposite field. He could, be under. That helps out a lot because that's kind of a gadget kind of player, like a Percy Harvin type of player. And it also helps because Curtis Samuel is the same type of player. So you have Terry McLaurin, who's the true wide receiver one, always going to be running the posts, going to be running the in routes, going to be running the comebacks. Anything usually that outside receivers run. You have on the inside, you have Curtis Samuel and Rashad Bateman to be able to be kind of gadget guys. They could play in the backfield. Even Curtis Samuel last year had 10 times where he aligned in the backfield in one game. So Curtis Samuel could show that he could also be a running back in a game. So you have Rashad Bateman along with Curtis Samuel, Terry McLaurin, and Logan Thomas to also help out with the pass catching abilities. All this is going to help out if Washington gets a quarterback or does something with the draft because Alex Smith retired. They only have Tyler Heineke left, and they don't have Dwayne Haskins anymore. He's on the Pittsburgh Steelers. But after that, the Chicago Bears, it looks like they're going to get a safety out of TCU. This helps a lot because they need someone that help them with Eddie Jackson. Eddie Jackson's one of the best safeties in the NFL, but Trevon Moehrig is who they're going to get. He is in the 99th percentile in coverage grade as a free safety, so that just shows with forced incompletion percentage of 23.7%, so a little over 1 out of every 5 times it's passed him, it's incomplete. Really, really good, especially for an individual stat. And someone who doesn't get the ball thrown to them as often, especially if you're throwing into a safety. Sometimes it's at a corner, sometimes it's the inside, and the safety has to help because the safety is the last man on the field, especially as a free safety. This helps out a lot with the Chicago Bears. This could help them get more opportunities on offense. David Montgomery is who we like, but we do not know how the Bears offense are going to do. I'm not too hyped up on them just because they have Andy Dalton. And Andy Dalton hasn't shown me that he's going to do anything to make me happy that he's the starting Bears quarterback. So I just stay away from the Bears offense completely. Just stay away from the Bears. Let's go to the Colts. The Colts look like they're going to add an edge rusher who runs a 4.38. So, he's fast as all heck. And he also had 7 sacks for Penn State last year. Jason Owe. Once again, we're not doing IDP, so that's good for the Colts. They just need to help out that defense. Tennessee Titans are going to do the same thing. It looks like they're going to get another edge defender, Jalen Phillips, out of UCLA. He has played 962 career snaps, which is great because that just shows how much work he's put in. And he also gets to the quarterback 18% of the time. And that ranked 20th in the FBS. Good for the Tennessee Titans. They need someone to rush the quarterback a lot just for the simple fact that they were bottom 5 in pass defense last year. The Jets are going to get Caleb Farley, one of the better corners coming out of the draft, out of Virginia Tech. He's a great corner. The Jets need him. They need someone to help them out on defense. Like I said, they were the 27th ranked pass defense last year, so they need someone else. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they're not getting Najee Harris in the first round. Really surprising. Najee Harris is someone that I have always, really bragged about. I love Najee Harris. He had over 1,400 yards last year, had over 20 touchdowns. He's a pure power runner. He's a power runner, and he could catch. He's had games where he's caught seven catches, 66 yards, and 2 touchdowns, notably against Florida in the SEC Championship. I don't know why the Steelers are getting Asante Samuel Jr., but you can't be mad at them. He's one of the better corners. He's a ball hawk. That's exactly what the Steelers like. They got Minkah Fitzpatrick. That's what they do. They have Joe Hayden, who's more of a lockdown corner, so you could have him playing man coverage on one side, having Asante Samuel Jr. playing soft on the other end. It'll help out a lot. You could put him at a slot corner too. Asante Samuel Jr. could play against a slot. Great option. But I'm just saying, why won't you just get Najee Harris Jr. if you just let James Conner walk to the Arizona Cardinals? The Jacksonville Jaguars have another pick. They just got it from the Rams. They not just got it, but it was one of the picks that they obtained from the Rams. One of the many picks that the Rams have given up. And it looks like they're going to get wide receiver Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore, one of the better receivers in this draft. It'll help a lot because you have DJ Chark, who's going to go deep. You have Laviska Shenault, who also is going to go deep. Marvin Jones, who's going to be more of a, possession type of guy. And this guy's just a breakout guy. This is just a Deshaun Jackson. I'm going to take the top off. DJ Chark is he runs on 68% of the time. He runs pretty much intermediate to long, so 15 to 20 yards. But this guy's a pure stud. Elijah Moore from Ole Miss. He's only 5'9" and 175, but he ran a 4.35 on his 40 and a 6.6 on the cone drill. So it just shows, once again, the agility and big play ability that he has. Super speedy. They, translate his build to a Tyreek Hill. Ole Miss, you can't even argue about who's came out of there as of late because DK Metcalf came out of there and A.J. Brown. So they've shown you what type of talent that they could produce onto the next level. Yes, he's only 5'9", but for the Jacksonville Jaguars, if you already have Laviska Shenault, DJ Chark, Marvin Jones especially, why not add a guy who could actually add some flair and give Trevor Lawrence an easy 70-yard touchdown every once in a while? The Browns looks like they're going to get a linebacker, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Surprised I got that pretty much right. It's a linebacker that's all the Browns need. Their D-line is great. They added Josh Johnson and Troy Hill from the Rams on already a stout defensive backs that they have. Notably, they have Denzel Ward on the other end of Troy Hill and Josh Johnson. But adding linebackers is exactly what they needed. They already added Jadeveon Clowney. They added Myles Garrett. Perfect. Why not get a linebacker who runs a 4.7? He ranked 13th among 121 recent NFL caliber linebacker prospects, and he's one of the better coverage linebackers in this draft. So why not get him? The Ravens, typical. What are they going to get? They don't have Ngakoue anymore. They don't have Matthew Judon anymore. They just let him walk. So why not get another 3-4 linebacker edge from Georgia, Azeez Ojulari? Like I said, he runs a 3.4. He's 6'3", 240. Azeez is ranked the 13th best edge out of the upcoming draft. I like him just for the fact that the Ravens need to solidify that rush defense a little better. Last year they were slacking. They ranked 17th in rush yards allowed. This guy had 9 sacks last year, 20 hurries on the quarterback. He's in only 10 games, his Pro Football Focus ranking was 90. Anything over a 90 is really darn good. So, Azeez Ojulari is definitely someone that could help out the Ravens in that defense. I like the Ravens defense being a top 5 fantasy defense next year just because they make plays. This guy's a good 3-4 outside linebacker. So, since he has that burst of speed, him being fast, and he can get to the quarterback, that's going to help create more turnovers. The Saints, with Emmanuel Sanders getting released, and now that they need another number 2 alongside Michael Thomas, it looks like they're going to get Terrence Marshall Jr., wide receiver out of LSU. They compare him a lot to Justin Jefferson. You got to like this guy a lot because he runs a 4.3. He's 205 pounds, and he's over 6'1". Like I said, they compare him to Justin Jefferson, just his height, his build, everything about him, kind of just like the bare meat and bones of kind of looking at him. You're just like, wow, he has the same build as Justin Jefferson. We see what Justin Jefferson did in fantasy this year. 88 catches, 1,400 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Terrence Marshall Jr. also had 6 touchdown catches against Missouri. He's crazy. He's one of the better receivers coming out of the draft. Definitely one of the more underrated receivers coming out of the draft. And for the New Orleans Saints to get him to be a number 2, once again, he was playing in Louisiana at LSU, so he's going to be it's going to be a hometown boy. Everyone's going to love him. He's going to be a fan favorite. Makes a lot of sense. He's a deep threat. He caught 59.5% of the contested catches in his college career. That was ranking number 1 out of 63 qualifying recent NFL caliber prospects. So all these receivers, out of 63 of them that are pretty much ready for the NFL according to the analytics and the standards that are set for the NFL, he's the number 1 in catching contested catches. That's exactly what you want on the Saints. You need someone who's going to go up there and get it. You already know if they stick with Jameis Winston that they're going to have a guy who's just going to sling rock all day. Why not sling rock to Terrence Marshall Jr. to help out alongside with Michael Thomas Jr.? Because you already know Traquan Smith is pretty much a wide receiver 3. He's not a wide receiver 2 because you saw when he was a wide receiver 1/wide receiver 2. And I'm not talking about fantasy production-wise. I'm talking about when he was playing and Michael Thomas was hurt, he had to step in and be a wide receiver 2. And then when Emmanuel Sanders got hurt too, then he had to be a wide receiver 1, and he still wasn't producing. He would still only give you 7, 8, and 4 fantasy points. Granted, a lot of that was because of Taysom Hill, but they need someone else to help out in that New Orleans Saints offense. I love that for the New Orleans Saints. Do not forget the name, Terrence Marshall Jr. If he goes to the Saints, watch out, and you should draft him definitely in your fantasy leagues. Hopefully, you could get him in like the 10th round, like the way I got Justin Jefferson on a steal. The Green Bay Packers looks like they're going to get a tackle, which is exactly what they need. They have one of the best offensive lines, probably the second best offensive line in pro football, the Packers, but why not just add more? Aaron Rodgers, 35 years old. It looks like they're going to add Tevin Jenkins from Oklahoma State. Like I said, Aaron Rodgers, 35 years old. This guy's 6'6", 320. Why not have a big cowboy back there protecting for Aaron Rodgers? I mean, he feels like no one else wants to protect him anyway. So speaking about protection, the Buffalo Bills also look like they're going to get protection too. They're going to get another guard. What do they need? Why don't they get a runner? Why don't they just get Najee Harris? They're really set that Devin Singletary and Zach Moss, 2 running backs that we are going to stray completely away from in fantasy next year. Completely away, because Josh Allen's a real running back on that team, and he throws 50 times a game. So why would we draft their running backs? We already saw what they do. They take away from each other's value. They just vulture each other's stuff. They both didn't even rush for over 500 yards each last year. Josh Allen was the leading rusher on that team. It makes sense that they're going to get Elijah Vera-Tucker from USC. He could play guard and tackle. He only allowed 8 pressures on 305 attempts, and he's only allowed 7 pressures on 590 attempts at guard in 2019. He could play both. That's exactly what the Bills need. They just need a guy to kind of run with that power formation that they have where they all run. That power formation, they like to run 30 to 40% of the time in NFL games. The Kansas City Chiefs, looks like they're going to get a tackle out of North Dakota State, Dylan Radunz, since they're pretty much not going to get Russell Kuhn or Alejandro Villanueva. The Chiefs look like they're going to get someone in the draft. He had an 89.3 pass blocking rate last year, which ranked 10th out of all tackles coming into the NFL. But we like this guy because, the Chiefs, the only thing that the Chiefs really, really need is they need another tackle. They need protection. They need someone to help out Patrick Mahomes because it doesn't look like, because they just got rid of both their tackles and Kyle Long just came out of retirement. And it's this, just looking at it, you get a little scared. You don't know if they know what they're doing or if they're going to just build up in the draft. So we'll see how it goes. Like I said, they'll probably get Dylan Radunz And then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers holding that last pick. Looks like they're going to get a safety just to go alongside with the Twan Winfield Jr., which I already said is going to be one of the best defenses in fantasy football next year. They're probably going to get Elijah Molden coming out of Washington, one of the best players off the board. He's the third best slot cover cornerback since 2014. He has molds basically like Mike Hilton or Tyrann Mathieu type of person. It's the type of player you're going to get with them. You're telling me you need a Tyrann Mathieu type of guy with the linebacking core of Devin White, Levante David, and I can't even name Shaq Barrett. Then they're going to still have Jason Pierre-Paul. They have Ndamukong Suh. They also have, like I said, Antoine Winfield Jr. Just going to stack that defense. Top 5 fantasy defense going into next year. And that was all of the mock draft according to Pro Football Focus. We went through 1 through 32, and we went over their fantasy implications. Like I said, it's really safe to just go with almost any of these professional mock drafts just for the simple fact that social media kind of ruins everything. So everyone already knows who's going to get drafted, and everyone's already spilling the chisme, a.k.a. all the secrets and like the rumors are going all around on what they are going to on who's going to get drafted where and who they're going to get. It's not really going to be a surprise. Social media ruined it all. Ruins everything. But also helps out a lot of things because it lets you listen to this awesome podcast. We went through all 32 picks, as I said, and their fantasy implications, what the teams need in particular for each position, and if the receivers or running backs or skill positions that they got help them. It looks like only one tight end is going to come off the board, Kyle Pitts. A lot of quarterbacks are coming off the board. We still haven't seen Kyle Trask come off the board. So if he falls to the second round, that's good for a lot of teams. Kyle Trask is someone who did throw for over 4,000 yards last year, put up 40 points on Alabama, barely lost to them in the SEC championship game, put on a show. So we like him too. Trey Lance dropping to the 15th pick, that's really interesting to me because I don't know if that's going to happen. It seems like real low. It seems like the Niners would get Trey Lance before that would happen. And who knows, are the Broncos going to even get Mac Jones, or will they just get Justin Fields if the Niners just stick with Mac Jones because that's going to be Kyle Shanahan's boy? All these answers are all going to be answered next week at the draft. This is all just analysis. We're getting hyped up for the draft. The draft is where champions are made, and this podcast is where fantasy football champions are made. When we come back, we are going to talk about my top 10 favorite receivers coming out of the draft. We've been breaking it down every single show. We started out with quarterbacks, then we went to running backs, now it's receivers. I know we kind of went over some of the receivers now, but I'm going to give you the top 10 and who I like the best because I don't know. They have Devontae Smith over Jalen Waddle is even better. We'll see right after this.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Hello and welcome back to the final segment of the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. I am still your host, Ryan Basulto. We went over Pro Football Focused 1 through 32 mock draft. Pretty much every player going to every NFL team in the first round, their fantasy implications. We talked about what it could do for them, how it helps them fantasy-wise, mainly how it helps them more than negatively because I feel like unless it was like the Bears case or some of the other cases where they got a defensive person as opposed to an offensive person, those are the only times I was a little negative on it. But nonetheless, nothing but positive things to say. And I broke it all down. We talked about some of these receivers already, but I wanted to give my top 10 receivers that are coming out of the NFL 2021 draft, especially as it pertains to fantasy. I'm really excited about these receivers. I ranked them in a list of 1 through 10, as I said. And yeah, we're going to go over the top 10 wide receivers of the 2021 NFL draft class. Because the NFL 2020 draft class was littered with talented wide receivers, but the 2021 has a lot of playmakers. I really, really like this draft just as much as I like their quarterbacks. So let's go over my number 10 favorite draft prospect. It is Sage Surratt from Wake Forest. Wake Forest's Sage Surratt. He didn't play in the 2020 season, but he still belongs at the top list of receivers in this year's draft class. In 2019, when he did play, he had 66 catches, 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns in just 9 games, and he had topped 150 yards 4 times. Yeah, 4 whole times he topped 150 yards. He has a build like Michael Pittman. He's 6'2", 215. Like I said, like Michael Pittman, he uses his strength and speed. His strength and size to his advantage. He's a below average athlete. I'll give him that, lacking the explosiveness and top-end speed of other receivers on this list. But he's still capable downfield receiver by leveraging defensive backs well with his size, and he's good at making contested catches. He's a great blocker, so that helps a lot in NFL offenses. A team that needs him a lot, especially since he's a big possession receiver. The Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson's number 1 receiver last year was Marquise Brown. After that, it was Miles Boykin. Marquise Brown didn't have over 800 yards receiving. That's a problem. The Ravens threw for the least amount of passing yards per game last year. That's a problem. You can't just be one-dimensional and running the ball all the time. Everyone's figuring you out. It's already year 4, Lamar. You can't keep doing this. You can't do it every single year. Year 3, sorry. No, year 4. Year 4 for Lamar. Yes. You need a possession guy. Mark Andrews, a possession guy. He's a tight end, but he's a big body. You look for him in the red zone. He's going to be able to box out bigger defenders. Michael Pittman, a possession guy. He's a possession receiver too. He's big, stout. This guy's 6'2", 215. Size of a basketball player. This guy has the exact builds for a red zone type of offense. Lamar Jackson has no problem taking it 20-20, but once it comes to scoring down and breaking it down, and he has to, use his arm, he needs a bigger body. I think that Sage Surratt of Wake Forest would be a great addition for the Baltimore Ravens. My number 9 on my NFL prospects, wide receivers of the 2020 NFL Draft is Tylan Wilson from Oklahoma State. 2 losses in their last 2 years have hurt Oklahoma State's hopes for a Big 12 title, but Tylan Wallace has continued to show this draft stock this season. He was a first-team All-American in 2018, and he's always been a great weapon for the Cowboys. He's caught 185 yards for 3,163 yards and 24 touchdowns in his college career, making him one of the most productive receivers. So he showed more longevity than Sage Surratt. Oklahoma State, he also plays against bigger competition in Big 12 as opposed to the ACC. ACC is pretty much just all Clemson. This guy's only 6 foot, 190, but he's a great downfield threat and has great explosiveness. His free release is one of the best, and separation early on receivers is the best reason why he gets open. He did tear his ACL in 2019, and that ended his season early. The Cowboys, he also struggles against press coverage. When physical corners are in his face, he's more of a deep Deshaun Jackson type of guy, and that is all he's going to be. He's big, and I think that he would be a perfect addition to a team like the Falcons, because they could draft him in the second round after they get Kyle Pitts. They probably won't get Jamar Chase, but if they were to add Tylan Wallace out of Oklahoma State, he could be a down-the-field threat, which would help Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones. Because they always end up needing another receiver at the end of the day. And this year it was Zacchaeus Olamide, just because Calvin Ridley only got hurt one game this year, so he was a true wide receiver one. But Julio Jones was absent for 6 games this year. You can't have that happen again. Tylan Wallace would be a good addition. Number 8, I have Chris Olave from Ohio State. This guy, since the start of the 2019 season, because remember, Ohio State didn't have a full year this year. They only played 6 games. Olave has 75 catches, 1,238 yards, and 16 touchdowns. And he is just one of the better red zone targets out of the draft. He should still be a second-round pick, so you could get him real good. He played for Ohio State. He's already played for an NFL Pro-ready system. He's one of the better possession receivers, as I said. He has one of the best routes. He runs the best routes in college football. Chris Olave from Ohio State. We like him a lot. I think he would be good on a team like the Seahawks. The Seahawks need a more possession type of receiver because Tyler Lockett's deep all the way down the field. DK Metcalf, another deep guy. They just got rid of David Moore, longtime Seahawk receiver. They just got rid of him. They would need another possession guy to help Russell Wilson, especially since Russell Wilson's going to have to be running for his life most of the time because Chris Carson is probably going to be hurt or someone else is going to be hurt on that team. The Seahawks need another receiver. They specifically need a possession type of receiver. So I like Chris Olave at number 8 on the top 10 NFL draft prospects that are receivers in the 2021 draft. We got number 7, which is Amon-Ra St. Brown, the former 5-star recruit. Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's used to being one of the best receivers. He played at USC. Only played 3 games, but he had 19 catches, 266 yards. Wasn't bad, but he also had, a good season the year before that where he had 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. He has the highest upside just because of his athleticism. He has great burst, strength, and elusiveness. That's everything you want out of a receiver. This guy is just someone, when you look on the tape, you could tell that he's strong and he could create perfect separation. There was plenty of times where I would see him break from a route and he would create a large separation due to 1, his quickness and agility to be able to stop on a dime and cut. 2, you usually use that off arm as a receiver, kind of the arm that's getting touched by the defender. You use it to push off. And he was able, with his strength, to push off pretty much anybody. The 6'2" receiver out of USC is used to being one of the best athletes in the nation because when he came out of high school, like I said, he was a 5-star recruit. He's ready for this right now. USC products usually have great athletic ability, but you always just got to coach them and see if they're coachable. But when you look at Amon-Ra St. Brown, I see he's one of the better. He's one of the best receivers out of the draft. I mean, Michael Pittman just came out, so I could compare him to Michael Pittman as well. They have the same type of build, but this guy's stronger and he's faster than Michael Pittman. So I like him as the number 7th. The number 6 receiver coming out of the 2021 NFL draft, the guy I mentioned earlier, Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota. One of the best receivers in 2019. He didn't play in 2020, but he averaged 20 yards per reception, 1,219 yards in 2019, and 11 touchdowns. He opted out, like I said, again last year, but he has toughness. He's one of the better contested catchers out of all these people in the draft. I would say only Terrence Mitchell or Terrence Marshall has better hands under contest than Bates, but Bates is able to play. What's good about Bates is he could play with corners jammed on him. He could play with corners off on him. He doesn't need. It's not one of those cases like I said where I mentioned Tylan Wallace from Oklahoma State, where his biggest problem is when someone is jammed up on him. And he's more of a finesse corner like Deshaun Jackson. So if you jam up and get in his face, you'll be able to bully him around and toss him around. Bateman has strength and speed, so he's able to break off of all that. I like him a lot. He has good size. He's 6'2". He's probably going to be, like I said, a borderline first round pick. He'd be good on a Lions. He'd be good on what's that team I had him on the tip of my tongue. Oh, the Niners. He'd be good for the Niners too, because you could get him later in the draft. You could probably get him in the second round, early in the second round. If you're able to get him in the second round, you need to, because Deebo Samuel already had a broken foot, and Brandon Ayuk is already someone that has showed you he could be a wide receiver 1, but he still had COVID issues last year. They had to rely on Richie James and Kendrick Bourne. So when you're relying on those two, of course you're going to be last in the NFC West. So it would be good. Bateman would be one of the better. Bateman would be one of the better receivers to get in the draft. Like I said, Brandon Ayuk, COVID issues. Deebo Samuel, broken foot. How do you run without your foot? Number 5 is where it starts getting to the nitty-gritty. Terrence Marshall Jr., yes, I said he was the best at contested catches in all of college football last year. In 2019, he had 46 catches, 671 yards, and 13 touchdowns. 6 touchdowns in one game against Missouri. He's 6'3", 200 pounds. Huge, strong, has the build of Justin Jefferson. What more do you need? If you're saying he has the build of Justin Jefferson, he could catch better contested balls than Justin Jefferson. He's taller than Justin Jefferson. He played out of the same college, so pretty much the same system. Who else has came out of there? Odell Beckham. All the same type of receivers. Jarvis Landry. All the same type of receivers come out of there. So, you know that Terrence Marshall Jr. has a high ceiling. I like him at number 5 on my list of top 10 NFL draft prospects that are receivers. Let's go into number 4. Number 4. I know this guy's small at just 5'9", 180, and my whole argument is, the other guy was big, he could catch contested balls, but Rondale Moore out of Purdue is someone that's extremely special. He ran a 4.2 in this year's 40 at 5'9", 114 catches, 1,258 yards, and 12 touchdowns. Last year, his season got ended by a knee injury, but this man has exactly what it takes. He averaged over 20 yards per catch with a full season. That injury is what's the hardest thing about him, and that he's with the smallest receiver on the list, but he has a great potential to be a Tyreek Hill type of guy. His deep threat ability is spectacular. He could still be able to catch the ball. He was still top 10 in contested catches in the whole FBS. Rondale Moore also was able to prove that he could put up over 100 catches and over 1,000 yards and over 10 touchdowns in a season, which shows that he has a lot of talent-wise. If you pair him up with the right quarterback, maybe you pair him up with Aaron Rodgers if they want to actually help him out. Or if you pair him up with the Chargers. The Chargers they have Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, but they need a slot guy like Moore who could take the top off of the field. You could also get him on the Bengals. But I feel like this guy's going to be someone you'd have to get in the middle of the draft. Someone like the Eagles would have to get. But the Eagles aren't going to get him because they're going to get Jalen Waddle. But I'm already giving away the rest of the list. Rondale Moore out of Purdue. He's small, but trust me, expect him to make a big splash in the NFL next year. I know he's only 5'9", but he's got what it takes. Number 3, Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle got a full-time role finally last year after being behind Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs. He had at least 100 receiving yards in all 4 full games he played, catching 25 passes for 557 yards and 4 touchdowns. Two of those touchdowns were 87-plus yards, so you could see his big playability. His season was just cut short because he got a season-ending ankle injury on the opening game against Tennessee, which isn't good, but ankle injuries aren't the end-all, be-all. His acceleration is arguably one of the best in the draft class. He has one of the top speeds out of all these receivers. He's hit a top speed of over 20 miles per hour. He also has a great job at tracking the ball. on deep passes, and he's able to, extend plays a lot. If the Raiders could get him, that would help out a lot, but they don't have a pick. If the Colts could get him, I know, or the Colts. The Colts are probably what I have as the number one, just for the fact that Carson Wentz needs more help. T.Y. Hilton is unreliable. He's only played the last time he played a full season was 2016. You have Michael Pittman Jr., who still hasn't proven himself and still only had over 500 yards last year. And on top of Zach Pascal, you don't have Trey Burton anymore. You have Zach Ertz, which could help, but if you were to add Jalen Waddle in front of the best line in pro football with one of the top fantasy defenses / real life defenses in the Indianapolis Colts defenses, you'd almost have everything. So they're one big playmaker away. Like I said, Jalen Waddle, 2 of his 4 touchdowns were 87 plus yards. So that shows you he is a big play threat, always waiting to happen. But he's not as good as the answer for all answers, Devontae Smith. At number 2, I have him, the Alabama. You can't argue. He had 65 catches for 903 yards and 10 touchdowns in only 7 games. In a 7-game span last year, like I said, he had 1,800 yards, 23 touchdowns. He's only 6'1", 175, and that's why he's not number 1 on the list. But this guy has what it takes to take off the top off all defenses. If the Panthers were to get him, if the Falcons were to get him, if the Dolphins were to get him, if the Lions were to get him, it would be a big addition. The biggest help it would be the Dolphins or the Eagles, just because you would have that Alabama connection between Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith, 2 former colleagues as well. The Panthers would help out too, but the Panthers are probably going to get a tackle since they already have the weapons and a running back. The Lions want him. Lions are probably going to destroy his value. If anything happens good on the Lions, it's only going to be Devontae Smith, and that's it. But Jared Goff at quarterback with one of the shakiest lines in the NFL, along with DeAndre Swift, who's still a good fantasy running back. I would say top 15, but nothing to brag about. He's not even as good as Austin Eckler. So you combine all that with no Kenny Galladay, no Marvin Jones, only Devontae Smith out there. I don't know how good he'll do for you in fantasy. But on my list, he's the 2nd ranked receiver coming out of the draft. And number 1 is the boy I've always been hyped on. I've been hyping him up ever since I started this fantasy draft. Ever since I started talking fantasy football. Me, Ryan, yes. Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is going to be someone that you could draft in the first 4 to 5 rounds if he goes to the right team, like the Dolphins, maybe even the Eagles. This guy didn't play last year, but when he was a unanimous All-American in 2019, he had 84 catches, 1,780 yards, 20 touchdowns, broke the SEC record for receiving yards and touchdowns that season. But obviously Devontae Smith broke it after, but he didn't have much left to prove. He's 6'1", he weighs 40 more pounds than Devontae Smith, even though they're the same height. He's definitely one of the most gifted receivers in the class. If you just literally have the ocular test, you look at Jamar Chase go downfield, you look at Jamar Chase go up and reach for a ball, you look at Jamar Chase make plays after the catch. He is the best, by far the best out of all these receivers in the draft. If he goes to the Bengals, you draft him in the first 5 rounds. If he goes to the Dolphins, you draft him in like the first 6, 7, because I like Joe Burrow as a quarterback as opposed to Tua. But still, you still draft him really high. You draft him almost where kind of people drafted CeeDee Lamb last year. But I feel like Jamar Chase, man. Jamar Chase is going to be the best rookie out of that draft class, and he might be one of the best rookies of all time. Jamar Chase, he's the end of it. He's just the end of the show. That's it. That's it. That's Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is the end all be all. That's who he is. He's going to moss anyone that you know. He's going to outcatch anyone you know. He's going to be one of the best fantasy receivers who could produce for you next year right away. You don't have to wait. You don't have to stall. You don't have to be like, oh, maybe he needs to. No. Put him on the right team like the Bengals, or I said even the Eagles to some extent. Bengals, just put him on any team. The unanimous All-American is going to show you why I put him as number 1 coming out of the 2021 NFL Draft. We went over the mock draft. We went over my top 10 receivers coming out of the 2021 draft. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. You know the deal. Another good night. Hopefully, we become champions. This is 1 inch closer to becoming a champion. And yeah, thank you guys, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.